Hey guys, welcome back to Cinderella Sweatshop. I'm Marlene Devine, and today we have got a treat for you. I'm telling you, this is going to be a very special segment to me, and I'm going to start out at front and tell you why today's special segment means so much to me. We've all been affected by COVID. We all probably know someone who has had COVID or someone who has lost their life to COVID. Well, a lot of us here in Marshall County recently lost a friend, Daniel Hamby. Daniel was the life of the party. If you knew Daniel, you knew how he was and you know what a special man he was. Well, Daniel loved to cook. He adored cooking and he loved coming up with some of his own special favorite recipes. Sometimes they were good, sometimes they weren't good, but that's what it's all about, is just experiment and trying. So today's episode, I'm dedicating to my friend Daniel Hamby that we lost back in the end of summer last year, back in August, and this is for Daniel. So today we're going to be making a 15 bean soup, and I'm calling it my Hamby Special soup because it's made with 15 bean. It's like the bean bag mix that you see at the store that nobody ever buys because you don't know what to do with it. Well, today we're going to show you what to do with it. And we've kind of put a twist on that soup because Daniel made this little soup that he made with peas and tomatoes and Polish sausages and turnip greens. So we're kind of making that 15 bean soup into a special soup in honor of our friend Daniel. So we're going to be making that. We're going to be making a Mexican cornbread. And that is kind of like a casserole cornbread. It's a cornbread mix that we make up with some cheese and some corn and some ground beef. So we're going to be doing that today. And we're also going to be doing a coleslaw stir fry. This is something that is completely different. It's made with a coleslaw mix and it's a little stir fry. It's kind of a cabbage, so that goes good with the Mexican cornbread. And we're also going to be doing a super moist banana cake. So we're going to get started. We're going to get started today with our super moist banana cake. And it's very, very easy. Very easy to make. It is absolutely wonderful. It tastes great and it keeps very well. Because it is a moist cake and because it's made with cream cheese and butter as our frosting, you're going to want to keep that in the refrigerator after you make it. Now, if you're like me, I don't particularly like cake after it's cold, so I tend to leave it on the counter. And you'll be okay with that for like maybe a day or so, but that tends to kind of ferment after a while, so it's better advice to keep it in the refrigerator. Sometimes I'll keep it in the refrigerator and just keep a couple pieces out on the counter, just so that when I want to eat it, that it's nice and warm. But generally, it doesn't last very long, and I just give it away. So here's what we're going to make today with that banana cake mix. I'm going to give you the recipe before we get started. For the actual mix itself, you're going to use 1.5 cups of milk, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and you can use just the jarred lemon juice. That's what I use because this recipe doesn't call for zest or anything like that, and it doesn't really call for a lot of lemon juice, so I will use the bottled lemon juice. We're going to use 3/4 cup of butter, and I use only real butter and non-salted butter at room temperature. We're going to use 1 cup of packed light brown sugar, 1 cup of white sugar, 3 eggs plus 1 egg yolk. When I make a cake, if it calls for, say, 3 eggs like today, I always do the 3 eggs plus the 1 egg yolk because I feel like it makes any cake I make richer and it gives it a little bit of stability. So that's a little tip I'm going to share with you on that. So I always add whatever it calls for plus 1 egg yolk. And then along with the eggs, we're going to do 1 tablespoon of vanilla, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, not baking powder, but baking soda, 3 cups of all-purpose flour, and we're going to sift that. I always sift my flour, my dry ingredients together when I make a cake because it just gives it a little bit more texture. If you've never done that before, I urge you to do that because that makes everything so much better. And we're going to use 3 ripe bananas, and you'll see these look like they're ready to go in the trash, and that's because the riper bananas, they do so much better. They taste better, they're sweeter, the texture is better, and they just blend into your cakes and your breads a lot better. So we're going to use those in that today. And that's going to give you about 1.5 cups of mashed bananas. I always look at it like if it's a little less than what it calls for, I'll go ahead and put in 1 more. So if after that's done, if we go from like 1.5 cups to like 1 3/4 cups, then I will add a little bit of extra flour to to my recipe because that extra moisture will make your cake heavy and stodgy and it'll kind of sink to the bottom. So you want to compensate with that. If you ever go overboard on your fruit mixture, you want to add about a tablespoon extra of flour to that. So we're going to get started, and we're going to start with what we have to mix together first. These things make so much noise. With what we have to mix together first, and we're going to mix all of our wet ingredients into this mixing bowl. So we're going to get started with our eggs, and again, that is 3 whole eggs plus 1 egg yolk. Normally, that happens. Normally, I would save the egg whites if I know I'm going to be using something, making something that I need that extra egg white. But because, holy crapola, but because I'm not going to be making anything that requires that little bit of extra egg white, I'm not going to save that today. I'm just going to throw that away. These eggs are relatively small, so it's really not like I'm saving a lot. So there goes our extra egg yolk. Those are our eggs. I'm going to be mixing our milk, and we had 1.5 cups of milk. Now, anytime a recipe calls for milk, when making a cake, I always substitute the milk with buttermilk. And here's why. Because buttermilk always makes any cake richer, and it makes it moister. And we all want that moist cake. So anytime it calls for buttermilk, I substitute that with buttermilk. Now, I'm going to tell you this. Buttermilk straight in a cake sometimes is almost too wet. Have you ever made a cake where you look at it at the bottom and it looks like it's gummy? That's because you have too much moisture. The moisture and the fat content in buttermilk, I find that sometimes makes my cake a little bit heavy at the bottom. So if it calls for, like today, 1.5 cups of milk, I'm going to do 3/4 of the cup of the buttermilk and then the rest of the way with water. And that's because I want to dilute that buttermilk down, but the buttermilk flavor takes it to a whole new level. So we're going to mix up our water and our buttermilk up to 1.5 cups. Okay, so I'm going to get that ready. I'm not going to quite add the buttermilk just yet because I want to make use of the eggs and the butter and all my sugars, because that's going to break that down and cream it a little bit better. Anytime, and actually I probably should have done the sugars first, but it's okay. Anytime that you can cream together your eggs, your sugar, and your butter, that just makes it creamier and richer. So with our eggs, we're going to put 1 cup of packed brown sugar and 1 cup of white sugar. And y'all know I love these little aluminum measuring cups. This is a special cup to me. It was my grandmother's, and I snagged it. And with that, we're going to add 3/4 of a cup of butter at room temperature. Now, this is 1/2 cup of butter. And in my butter tray, I always keep some butter at room temperature. And that was 1 cup and... no, 3/4, that was 3/4 of a cup of butter. So we've already got 1/2. We're going to add to that 1/4 of a cup to make that up to the 3/4 of a cup. So we have our sugars, our egg, and our butter. And we're just going to put this on and cream it together. In between your mixing, you always want to stop and scrape down the sides of your bowl when you're doing this, because you want to get all that good and incorporated. And always turn it on and scoot that beater around just so I can get back in there behind it. Okay. And I'm going to show you guys what this looks like so you know what to look for. See how it's nice and creamy looking? It's nice and white and incorporated. You can kind of see when you look at it good that it looks like it's separating. That butter and the egg look like it's separating. Don't worry about that. That's just the moisture content in your egg. It's gonna be fine. Just wanted you to kind of see what it looks like so that when you make this at home, you know what you want it to look like before you start putting your dry ingredients in. And again, like I said, we always sift our dry ingredients, and I'm saving that buttermilk for very last because we're going to alternate our dry and our wet when we put that in together. So we're going to put in all of our dry ingredients now, and that's going to be our flour. And in that, we're going to have 3 cups of all-purpose flour. We're just going to put this in a little at a time and sift it. And here's why. If you notice when I'm doing all this as you do it, you're going to have clumps of flour. And if you don't sift it, then when you go to mix that in, sometimes that doesn't get mixed up good. And believe it or not, sometimes you're going to find a little settlement. See how that looks, those little balls of flour? It's just from packing. You know, it's probably sifted before it gets to the store, but just in shipping, it just does that. So we're always going to sift those. You can use like self-rising flour if you don't have the ingredients on hand, but I feel like sometimes that maybe the measurements aren't exactly the same. So if it calls for all-purpose, I always go with all-purpose. When you get to the bottom, you're going to see you've got these little grains of flour. Just use your hand, your clean hand, and just get them all down in there. There's nothing in there, no foreign objects or anything like that, but look how much different that looks. That flour almost looks like snow. That's going to make your cake so much better. So we have our 3 cups of all-purpose flour. We're going to add our 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And you see these little measuring spoons? This doesn't have nearly as long as a handle on it as I like. I'm going to show you. Today's segment, we're also going to do tips and tricks of things that I like. And see how this is short, but this is long? For something like this, I always keep things that I use a lot, like baking soda, baking powder. I always keep them in a bigger jar because I buy so much of it. And I just buy these big, long jars, just dump them in there when I buy it. But when you have an average measuring spoon, usually they're short, like this one or like this one. Well, you can't get that in there. So I always try to buy extras that are long, and these are longer and they're magnetic, so they kind of stay together better. And you know, I always wondered, why do they have different shapes? Here's why. Because this little side right here that's oval, that's going to be your wet side. So when you measure like vanilla extract or oils, you use the oval side. But on your dry, you're going to use the square. I don't know why, but for some reason they make them that way. And some people will tell you that there is a difference because they're different. I don't know if it's just in how it stays in the little spoon different. I don't know, but I'm a rule follower. So if they say that that's what you do, then I'm going to do it until I want to bend the rules to make work for me. So our baking soda is 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And I'm going to show you how it's different to put this longer spoon down in there. And again, we're going to use our dry side. And that's 1 teaspoon. And I always, most people would just kind of eyeball it, but you know, there's a lot there. You can use your finger or a knife. Look at the difference. When you take that off, that's a lot going off there. So 1 teaspoon of our baking soda. We're going to sift that in. So that's all of our dry ingredients is sifted in together. And you want to sift your soda, your flour, your salt, or whatever that calls for, because sometimes those will be clumpy as well, especially if it's sat in your pantry for a little while. So we have all of our dry ingredients. Now, the original recipe did not call for cinnamon, but I feel like that cinnamon just kind of enhances that taste of the banana mixture. So here's what I do. I just take a little bit of that flour mixture when I put my cinnamon in there, I just guess that's probably going to be about a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. I don't really want a whole lot, but I just want enough so that it gives it that little extra flavor, and it just enhances it, and it kind of also will give you a little bit of color. Okay, so we've got our wet ingredients, we have our dry ingredients here, and we're good to go. So we've got our, oh, I didn't do my lemon juice. See, I get to talking, and it happens. Get to talking. 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now, the recipe called for milk, so I'm guessing that probably by adding the lemon juice to the milk mixture probably gives you a little bit like you would buttermilk, but although I'm using it, I'm still going to add that to it. So it's 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And I'm just going to put that directly in my milk mixture. And I'm going to stir it up. Now, if you don't have buttermilk at home and you have to make your own buttermilk, you can use lemon juice. You can use vinegar, white vinegar. Pour it in your milk, just about a tablespoon or so of those. You want the acid from that. Stir it up and let it set. By doing that, it's going to kind of clabber your milk a little bit and make your milk into buttermilk. We don't have to let it set today because we're already doing that. So here's where that comes together. Now, we haven't put our bananas in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I like to do my bananas. You can do them any way you want to. You do you, I'll do me, but I'm going to show you what I like to do when I get ready to do my bananas. I like to slice them up. And I just peel them, and I'm going to tell you something else. If you can save your banana peels, save your banana peels. If you have, like, summertime, you're growing tomatoes or even a houseplant or flower on your porch. In the summertime, I always save my banana peels, and I'll put them in an ice cream bucket with about a gallon, almost a gallon of water, and leave them overnight. The potassium from your banana peels is going to leach out into your water, and then the next morning, take that water and pour it on your plants. Tomatoes love it. Ferns love it. Any flower loves that extra potassium. So go ahead and save those. It's cold outside and we don't have any plants, so we're going to throw them away today. You can also put them banana peels around flowers because it will, especially if it's raining, those flowers will also love that. You just set it on the ground and it will just go right in there. There's always a use for everything. And even your eggshells, I always grind them up and put them around my tomato plants because that extra calcium in those is really good for your plants. When I plant my tomatoes in the summertime, I will always take eggshells and put in there when I plant my plants in there. And I also will do minnows. I know that sounds kind of gross, but I go get minnows, and that's a good excuse to go fishing with my father-in-law. I will take those minnows. The Indians used to do that. They would put like fish bones and fish carcasses and stuff in there. So I'll dig out my hole. I'll put the dead minnows in there. I'll put my eggshells. I'll put some Miracle Grow, and then I put my tomato plant in there and I cover it up with dirt. They do wonderfully. If the Indians did it, why can't we? So there's always use for everything you have, even these rotten bananas that don't want to come off. You may have to cut the end of it off. They don't taste good to eat to me when they're like this. Now, my daddy loved brown bananas. And you know, when you look at them, when you peel them up, they don't look bad. Really, they don't. It's just, you know, they don't last like they used to. They just turn brown. I just don't like the flavor they have when they get the peels brown. And you're probably wondering, how does she know how much she's got going on here? Well, I don't. I'm just going to guess at it. Part of my banana peel is still on there. And those do not taste good at all when you're cooking them. Okay, so we've got that, and we're just going to take a little masher and just kind of mash that up. These little things are wonderful. It's just a little masher that I use when I make hamburger. I mash them up in my pan when I'm cooking. We're going to use that here in a little bit when we do our cornbread. Just mash them up. And you don't have to get it perfect, because when we put this in that mixer, that mixer is going to mash them up a little bit more. We're just kind of getting the idea that we have what we need. I didn't say these things were fun to clean up. I just said they're handy to have. They're not fun to clean up. Okay, we want our goal to be about 1.5 cups of bananas. And this is going to put us about 2 cups. So it's going to be a little more than we need, and that's okay. That is okay, because we're going to compensate with a little extra flour. So we're just going to put us a little extra flour in there to compensate for that little bit extra. And I am going to put just a little bit of this baking soda, not much, maybe 1/4 of a tablespoon, because we are using all-purpose flour or plain flour. We want that little extra rising agent in there. We don't want no flat, hard cake. Again, we're going to sift that. So here we go. We've got the bananas in there. We're going to give that a good little mix. And it splatters all over me. Now, you don't have to worry about mashing those bananas up any extra, because as you mix it with your flour and everything else, it's just going to keep doing that. So we always want to start with dry. So we're going to put a little bit of our flour in and alter the wet and the dry. So we got our flour. We're going to put a little milk, a little flour, a little milk, and we're going to end with our milk. And you just really want to mix this up until it's good and mixed together. You don't want to mix it too much, because that's going to put way too much air in there, and you're going to have great big air bubbles in your cake when it bakes. You know, sometimes you'll cut into them and you'll see a big air bubble. That's usually because you put too much air in there. Also, it will make it a little dry and crumble. So anytime you have a cake that's dry and crumbly, it could be because you've mixed it too much. These things can be a booger to get out. And you'll see there's a chunk of that banana. I'm not worried at all about that, because I kind of like that in there. Now, if you'll remember, we once spoke about how we bake a cake, and I told you that I use these belts. Well, today I'm going to show you what these belts are. And this right here is a belt that I put on my cake pans, and I'm going to show you how it works. When we take our cake out, you're going to see why I'm so adamant about it. Now, these come in different lengths. I buy them, and they come several different lengths. Sometimes they're too long for what I need, so I'll just take these belts and cut them to go around my pan. And you'll have scraps. I always save those, because I have different size cake pans, 4-inch, 6-inch. These are 8-inch pans, and it's going to be really too big to go around the pan. You can overlap it. So I always save the extras. We're going to take these belts and we're going to get them wet with water. You want to make sure and get them really good and wet. And then we're just going to lightly squeeze out the water. You don't want it to be dripping with water, because if it's dripping with water, then it's just going to drip down in your oven. If you have something underneath it, then it's going to get wet. So we're just going to take this little belt here, and I always start and wrap it around there. Try to keep it about midways on your pan, especially this one. It's a deeper pan. Now, the recipe calls for 3 8-inch cake pans. Now we're doing it today in 2 8-inch cake pans, and I'm going to tell you why. I feel like that sometimes it just makes it prettier if it's done in a deeper pan. Now when we do that, we're going to want to split the layers, And that's going to take us from 3 layers to 4 layers. Now today, I may not split that layer because I really like the cake. It's really, really good. And the icing doesn't mean so much to me. So today we're going to keep these probably in just a 2 layer, but it's going to be thicker. And that's something you can control yourself. You know, just because a recipe calls for an 8-inch pan, you don't have to use an 8-inch pan. You can use something smaller, you can use something bigger. It's all in your preference. It's all in what you want to do. That's what makes this so good, is that you can do what you want to do. I'm sticking with 8-inch pans, but I'm not doing it into the 3 pans. I'm going to do it in 2. So we're actually going to have 2 layers, but they're going to be thicker actual cakes. So, you know, and again, that just is your own preference. And today that's what we're going to do. We're going to lightly spray our pans with a little cooking spray. That just keeps everything from sticking, and it makes your cleanup a little better. Something I always do too is I always line my pans with parchment paper. Now I buy it in a roll and I cut it off a little bit longer than what I need, and I'm going to show you why. So we've got 2 pans, so I have 2 sheets of parchment paper, and I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to fold it in half again, and then I'm going to fold it again like this, so it looks almost like if you were going to make a little funnel. Now I'm going to turn my pan upside down, and I'm going to go from the center of the pan to right here on the outside edge. Now, if I was going to cut a circle and make that circle just align the bottom of the pan, I would mark it or score it and cut it off right here. But because it is a deeper pan, I don't worry about these pans sticking because I know these are good pans. These are some of my favorite pans. So I'm not worried so much about that sticking. But I do want to make sure that it colors good, the color on the outside of the cake. So I'm going to fold it over and go down the side of the pan. And I know that at the top of the pan is about right here. Okay, so if you'll see here, I've kindly used my fingers and marked it. Kind of put a little bend there, and I know that that's where it's at. So I'm going to take my scissors, and I'm just going to pretend to make a little round circle here, just like that, and cut this extra off. I've moved my trash bowl. And that's what we're going to have. When you open that back up, it's going to make somewhat of a circle. Now you'll see it's going to be a little goofy looking. I'm a little OCD, so I'm going to go back in there and clean that up a little bit just because. And you're probably thinking, well, Marlene, how are you going to make that work? Here's how. We're going to take our scissors and cut slits in it so that when this paper goes around our pan, it actually forms a little overlap, sort of. And this works with anything you're baking, even in a square pan. See how that looks? You've got the little slats. So I'm just going to take it where the center is and put that in there. And just push it in with my fingers all the way around. And here's where this is going to help us. You're going to see where these little slits are. It's going to help it to lay flatter up against the side of our pan. And it's going to help to prevent any leakage. And you just push it in there. Some people might think that parchment paper is just an added expense. Well, it is, but it's also a little bit added insurance. And to me, it's worth it. Just push it in there with your fingers. And you're going to want to make sure that you get it as flat as you can. Just use your fingers and just fold that paper in there. If it overlaps, that's okay. That's why we cut those little slots in there, so that we can make it overlap a little bit better. Okay, so we are going to pour in our cake mix. And something else I like to do is go around the outside of the bowl and just kind of make sure I've got it all. Dig down in there underneath, because sometimes you won't get all that down there in the bottom. And we want to make sure and get all that stirred up real good. And I like to just kind of lift it to kind of get any of those extra air bubbles out that we might have put in there. And then we're going to pour half and half. And it's kind of hard to guess, so we may have to take a couple of stabs at it. I like to put them side by side so I can make sure and kind of eyeball that. Get all that out of there. There's a little bit of that banana peel I got on there a while ago. We're going to get that out. Okay. Now something else you want to do is you want to make sure and kindly knock that a little bit. Clean up your edges if you have any mixture that's got on there. Just take that pan, always shake it and tap it. Now if you'll see in here, you'll see all these little tiny air bubbles that have come to the top. We're just going to shake it. And there's one or two that's busted. All you're doing by doing that is removing any extra air bubbles that's in there. Now keep in mind, you put baking soda in there. So that's going to form a gas and it's going to automatically get those air bubbles in there, but we're just keeping it from drying our cake out. We're going to pop these in a preheated oven of 325. And also, if you remember, I told you another trick I use is to keep pans of water in the bottom of my oven. Now, the last time we talked about that, I had some Pyrex bowls in there. And it was brought to my attention that those are glass bowls, and that's not always a good idea. You know what, you're right. Pyrex is good, but they do tend to break. They're not supposed to, but they do. So I have replaced those with miniature little bitty loaf pans. Now, I'm going to tell you, these pans are not pretty, but that's okay. This is not a beauty pageant. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. My oven is dirty, but you know what? That doesn't matter either. I like a clean house and I like a clean oven, but I like to cook. And those two things don't go hand in hand. So my oven's a little dirty today, but I'm going to show you my pan that I keep in here. We're going to pop these in the oven on 325 for probably about 25 to 30 minutes. Because these are going in deeper pans, it may take a little longer. Again, just keep an eye on your oven, keep an eye on your cake. You can smell it usually when it's ready, and you can hear it. What I mean by hearing it is you'll take your ear down there and you'll hear it bubbling, but it's not bubbling real fast. Kind of like you listen to Rice Krispie cereal and it kind of pops. Well, your cake does that too, but it pops slower. When it pops slower, that means all the moisture's out of it that needs to come out. So once you do that a time or two, you'll get used to that sound. So we're going to pop these in our oven. There's those pans down there. Now you'll see it looks like it's got something floating on the top. That's because these pans are like a coated pan to keep anything from sticking, and that coating just keeps coming off and coming off, but that's okay too. Always keep a little thermometer in there. We're going to pop these in. Okay, our next little project we're going to do is we're going to do our Mexican cornbread, and we're going to do a little prep work here. Sometimes I try to get that done before you guys get here, but today I did not. So we're going to take our pan with just a little bit of oil in there, and we're going to take a half of an onion, and we're going to save the rest of this onion because we're going to use that in our soup that we're going to do after a while. So we're just going to take our onion, always cut the bottom off, and that little top part because it makes it peeling it so much easier. Okay. And we're just going to chop this onion up. It doesn't have to be perfect. I really don't like big chunks of onion. I love onions, but I don't really like the big chunks of onions in this because some people don't really like onions. But you got to have that onion flavor. I think that makes it good. So if you don't make them so big, they don't know. And that pan's getting good and hot for us. Just give them a little extra chop there. So that's about a half of a sweet white onion. I really like the Vidalia onions because they taste better. But you can't always find a Vidalia. I'm just getting my cast iron skillet ready. This is what we're going to actually cook our Mexican cornbread in. And you always, when you make cornbread, you want to get your pan good and hot. So we're getting that ready for the next step while we're doing all this other. That's about a half of an onion. And we're gonna put in about a pound of hamburger meat. And this is a lot more than a pound. This is actually 3 pounds. We're gonna take about a third of that. And I buy it in a big bulk like this because, guys, it's gotten so expensive. Hamburger meat is crazy. I mean, you can almost eat a steak for that. So we're gonna pop in about a pound of that ground beef. We'll take our handy little chopper thing here. Just kindly mash that up as it cooks. And I don't cook on this thing very often, just when I'm cooking for you guys, because I want you to see what I'm doing. It's a little slower, but that's okay. We got all kinds of time. So we're just gonna let that cook. In this bowl here is our cornmeal mix. It's about a 1.5 cups of white self-rising cornmeal. And I use a cornmeal mix for all my cornbreads because I just feel like it tastes better. So that's, like I said, that's about a 1.5 cups of white self-rising cornmeal, about a 1/2 cup of self-rising flour, and about 2 tablespoons of sugar. You don't have to put the sugar in there. I do because I feel like that just gives it that little extra flavor. So we're gonna stir that all up. And you wondered what this goofy looking spoon is. This is a Danish dough whisk, and it is wonderful, especially for something like this because it stirs everything up good. It just kind of cuts through it. I love it for cornbread. I love it for biscuits, brownie mix, anything I'm gonna stir up. This is one of my favorite things. And this is something I'm gonna tell you about after a while in a little part we're gonna do. So there's our cornmeal mix. We're gonna add probably about, I wouldn't even say 1/8 of a teaspoon of red pepper flakes, but just enough to kind of give it that little extra Mexican flair. We're gonna stir that up in there. And then I have 1 can of drained whole kernel corn. We're gonna add that in there too. We're gonna add 2 eggs. We're gonna get that buttermilk back out. I buy my buttermilk by the gallon. It's hard to find it, but sometimes you can find it at Kroger's by the gallon. And I don't really know how much I'm putting in there because I just stir it till I like the consistency. You don't really have to have this as thin as you would regular cornbread. Almost to that part, but not as thin, because keep in mind this corn has a little bit of water in it, so it's gonna kindly come out as you cook it, thinning it down a little bit. Doesn't the onions just smell good when they cook? Smells so good. We're gonna put about a pinch or so of salt, and we are going to put a couple shakes of black pepper into our mixture here. Now we've got all that hamburger meat kindly chopped down real good. Jeff Edwards, I'm using a wooden spoon. Y'all remember he's always on me about them wooden spoons in my pans. Okay, we're gonna go back to this. See how this is a little thick? It's gonna be a little too thick for us, so we're gonna add just a little bit of more of that buttermilk. And that's probably gonna give us, I wouldn't say a cup, maybe about 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. See how it just kind of like drops down there, but it doesn't, it's not just real thin. That's what we're looking for. So to this, we're gonna add some shredded cheese, and you can use any kind of shredded cheese you want. You can use pepper jack cheese, you can use cheddar cheese. Velveeta cheese is really good in this if you get it grated. I'm just gonna use just some, it's like a medium cheddar. And they call this a farmhouse style cut because it's thicker. And I'm gonna show you what that is. See how big that is? It's almost like if you took the big fat whole end of the grater. I really like this cheese because it almost gives you extra cheese. So if you're a cheese lover, this is really, I really like that cut of it. So we're gonna put probably about a half a cup into there. And you're gonna stir it up just kindly to mix all that in there. So we've got our flour, we've got our cornmeal mix, we've got a little sugar, we've got 2 eggs, about 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. We're gonna add a little bit of oil. That's gonna be probably about 2 tablespoons of oil. You always wanna put the oil in there because that's what's gonna make your cornbread moist. So we're gonna stir that up in there. So you can kind of see it's kind of chunky looking. You see the corn, you can see the cheese in there, and if you get to looking, you can see that pepper flake. Okay, see all that fat that came from there? We don't want that in our cornbread. We are going to drain it. Now, in my sink over here, I have a glass bowl and a colander, a strainer. I always put that in my sink in case I spill some of it. I don't want to, but in case I do. And we're just gonna drain all of that fat off of there. Sometimes it takes a little bit for all that fat to get down in there and drain off. So we're gonna take advantage of that time. We've got our hot cast iron. Now that's good and hot. And here's something else that I've learned to do. I'll take a little extra oil to kind of cool it down a little bit. I always take a paper towel. I don't use cooking spray on my pans simply because sometimes it makes it gummy. Cooking spray and even sometimes liquid oil like this will make our pans gummy. After I finish using my cast iron, I'll always wash it, put it on the stove, turn it on high, and get it good and hot. And then once it's hot, then I go over it with some bacon grease or some lard to treat my pan with. I don't use the liquid oil to treat my pans or cooking spray because they get gummy. So that's another trick too. So we've got our pan really hot. We're gonna take about half of our cornbread mixture and pull it in our hot pan. And the reason why we get that pan hot is because it helps with your cooking time. If it's good and hot, it doesn't slow it down. So our pan's good and hot. We're gonna take that hamburger meat that we've drained, got all that fat out, and we're just gonna pour it on top of our half of our cornbread mix. And just kind of move it around so that you kind of get a little bit of hamburger meat in just about every bite. Now this itself could be a meal. It really could be because it's really good. It's just a really good thing. Some people will put corn in their Mexican cornbread, they'll put hamburger meat. Some people don't. I like it because it's kind of a meal in itself. So we're just going to take some more cheese and just sprinkle on top of that. And you just kind of move it around, kind of like you do your hamburger meat. We want some cheese in every bite. You cannot have too much. And I'll tell you what's really good with this is to mix it like some of this cheddar cheese with like a grated pepper jack cheese. That's really good. Okay, so we've got that. We're going to take the rest of our cornbread mix and just pour it over the top. And if you don't get it equal amounts, half and half, that's okay too. Don't sweat over it. Just use your little tool. You want to cover up that hamburger meat. If you don't cover up the outer edges, that's okay, because that cheese can just cook and brown up a little bit. You just want to make sure and get all that hamburger meat covered up. You don't want that to dry out. Okay, so you kind of see what it looks like. Now, something I like to do after I get it put together like this, just to make it a little pretty, is just to kindly sprinkle a little bit of these pepper flakes on the top, just so that you know what it's made out of. And we're going to pop this in our oven. It's preheated to 425, and this takes quite a while, probably 30 to 40 minutes. Now you'll see my pans in there. I don't have water in them today because this is cornbread, and it's got the hamburger meat in there. If I was doing regular cornbread, I would probably go ahead and put some water in there, but we need it to, it'll also slow down your cooking time, and we need it to kind of cook faster, simply because it is a moist cornbread with the corn in it and with the hamburger meat and the fat and all that from it. So we're not going to put the water in those pans. So we've got it on 425. We're going to let that cook for about 40 to 45 minutes. I'm going to take a look at our cakes here. They're looking good. Not done yet. They smell great. So we got that ready to go. I'm going to take a break for just a minute and clean some of this mess up, and I'll be right back. All right, so now we're going to start on our Hamby's special soup, and I'm just going to heat up a little pan here with a little bit of oil. And this is about a package and a half of smoked sausages. We're just going to pop these in our skillet. And to that, we are going to take half of this onion we had left over from a while ago. We're just going to chop that up like we did earlier. And you can use a chopper. I sometimes will, sometimes I won't. This is not really a whole lot of onions to cut up, so I really don't want to have to wash that darn thing. So I'm just going to do it all by hand. And you know, it doesn't really take that long to do it. It's just doing it. A lot of people don't like to do it, but to me that's part of cooking, and I enjoy it. Okay, just chop them up. Again, we don't want them to be little bitty. And this is something else that's one of my favorite things, is a little bench scraper. I love these things. It just helps move all your stuff without making such a mess. And I buy these at the Dollar Tree. They're $1. I literally probably have 15 of them in my cabinet because I use them for so much. So to that, we're going to add a shallot. And a shallot is a form of onion. It's kind of like a very little red onion or purple onion. I don't know why they call them red onions, because to me, they're purple. But a shallot is a little bit like one of those, but to me, it just makes everything taste better. So we're going to take that, and they're kind of hard to chop up because they are so small. I'm left-handed, so my husband Todd, when he watches me cut something up, he says I give him a heart attack because he says, "My God, you're going to cut your hand off." I may have cut myself a time or two. Okay, so we've got that. We're going to add that to our mixture as well. My pan might be just a little bit small for this, but that's okay. We really just want to get that good and cooked, the onion mostly, because the sausages are already kind of pre-cooked, so we don't have to worry about those as well. And to this, we're going to add about a clove of garlic. And when I use garlic, I just put the little pieces usually in this little container with my shallots. And it's got a little skin on them. I'm going to take my knife and just kind of slap it and get that skin off of there the best that I can. And then we're going to chop it up. Fresh garlic really does make a difference. Sometimes I keep a jar of minced garlic in my refrigerator. If I don't have any garlic on hand, I just use that because it keeps for a long time in the refrigerator. But fresh garlic is better. That's another one of those things that it's kind of a pain in the butt to do, but you know, if it's worth it, you'll do it. And to me, it's worth it. And garlic is kind of a pain to chop up like the shallots because it is smaller, but that's okay too. You just keep moving that knife around. Now something else I do after I've got all that done, I'll scrape it all up in a pile and I'll take my hand and just kind of mash it, because if you've missed some of those spots and you didn't get them, at least you're kind of mashing it up that way. We're going to get all that garlic in there. I wish y'all was here so you could smell how good this smells. If you get in a hurry and you think, oh, it's not cooking fast enough, something you can do is just take a little lid and put a lid on it. That's going to help to hold that heat in. You don't have to do this, but it will kind of help to speed that up a little bit and cook your onions for you. Now, while we have our sausages cooking, I'm going to show you what I've done here. I did do some of this before I brought you guys in here because this bean mixture is a dried bean. And we have kidney beans in here. We have lentils. It's got some black-eyed peas. It's got some black beans. It's got some cannelli beans. It's got some pinto beans. Just a whole bunch of a mixture of beans. Now, I did soak these beans. There's that big old butter bean. I did soak these beans overnight because they just cook better. Now, it's going to take you to cook these beans, even though you've soaked them overnight or for 8 hours, it's going to take you probably about 6 hours or so to cook these beans because some of them are harder than others. Those lentils will take not near as long, but those big old kidney beans, they're a hard bean. So, you know, it's going to take longer. So soak them overnight in some water, and then you're going to drain that water. In this pot this morning, I put my beans. I put 2 containers of chicken stock and 2 of those containers filled with water. So that's what you see in this pot now. Plus, added to that, I use the seasoning that comes in that bean mix, the ham seasoning. I put that in there along with 3 tablespoons of a Cajun mix. Now, I like Old Bay. So I'll put that in there. So that's your ham mix that comes in your bean soup. That's your beans, 2 containers of chicken stock, 2 containers of water. The chicken stock comes in that. So you're going to fill those up with water. And your Old Bay seasoning. That's all this is. I did not add any extra salt. I did not add anything. That was just it. Whatever the season is what you got. Now, I put that in there because you want to take advantage of your cooking time and you want to season those beans. Not that I wanted to leave you all out, but I wanted to kind of get ahead of the ball game. So that's why we put that in there. You want to, when you start cooking your beans, you always want to add your salt because that goes down in there. This is a very, very hearty soup because your beans is a protein and then your protein from your sausages. So this is a very hearty soup. So that's what we got here already cooking ahead of time is the chicken stock, the water, and our spices. So to that, we are going to add 1 large can of diced tomatoes. We're going to open those up and we're going to drain them. We're going to add 1 can of Rotel tomatoes. That's going to kind of help to give us a little extra kick. And 1 can of whole kernel corn. Just because corn is really good in soup. And I like that. Otherwise, you just got bean soup and turnip greens. Now today we're going to use spinach because I couldn't find any turnip greens at the store. Everything is so hard to get now. I'm telling you, it's expensive, and when you find it, it's expensive, and if you can't find it, you got to substitute, but that's okay. We can substitute our turnip greens for spinach. I like spinach. I even looked for some fresh ones, but I didn't have that either. So we are just going to drain all of our vegetables into a colander in the sink. Now my Rotel, I'm not going to drain that, and here's why. I like that extra juice from that. So we're just going to add that in there. Along with our Rotel. I'll show you what we look like so far. See those little pieces of tomatoes in there? That's what we got. To our soup mix, we're just going to add 1 bag of cut spinach. And like I said, you can use anything, a green leafy, you can use spinach, you can use turnip greens, you can use kale. Whatever you want to do, you can use it. You can use frozen, you can use canned. I don't really like the canned in a soup because they're kind of mushy. So if I can't get fresh, then I'm going to get frozen. And it just adds so much color to all of that. And that's still just a little bit frozen, but it's going to cook pretty quickly. These are good and brown. This is about where we want it. Now I am going to just dump this directly in our pan with the oil and everything that's in there. That's okay, because we don't really have any oil in our soup already. So it's not like it's going to be just standing in there. And see all that good stuff in there where that's browned down, we're going to scrape that off too. Put that in there. I'll even take a little bit of water. And a lot of people think, oh, that's just burnt. No, honey, that's the good stuff. That's where all your flavor comes from, is all that down in there where that onion has cooked and caramelized with that fat from the sausages. And we're just going to stir that up in there and pour that right back into our soup mix. So that's what your soup is going to look like. We're going to let it continue to cook. I'm going to pull some up and let you look at it in this little ladle here. We got all of our good stuff. We got our beans in there. We've got our turnip greens or spinach today. We've got our tomatoes, our Rotel tomatoes, our sausages, our corn, all of that. Ready to go. So we're going to put the lid back on this and let it cook for just a little bit longer. I'm going to move it back to the stove and we're going to make something else. Okie dokie, here's our next little treat we're going to make today is a stir-fried slaw. And I call it a stir-fried slaw because we use slaw mix. We're just going to take a bag of slaw mix. We're going to use, I use a stir-fry oil. I buy it in the Asian department at Walmart or Kroger or wherever I go. It's the oil. It's got different flavors in it. I don't really know what's in it, but I like it. And I'm going to use a little sesame oil. And then I'm going to use a rice vinegar. We're going to add a little sugar to that. So in our pan, while it's getting hot, I'm going to use a little bit of our stir-fry oil. We're just going to put that in there, about 2 tablespoons. And in with that, I'm going to add about a half a stick of butter. And put that in there and let that get melty. with about, now this is really strong, this sesame oil. We don't want to use near as much, but we want to flavor it really good. So we're going to add probably about a tablespoon in our mixture with that. That's good and hot. It's not quite got everything melted like we want it, but it's getting there. I'm just going to stir this up until that butter melts good with our oils. And while that's heating up, I'm just going to take a little bit of ginger. And I don't like the peeling. Some people will go ahead and leave that peeling on. I'm not going to because I don't like the way I like it. So I'm just going to take my little grater here and just grate a little bit of ginger. Ginger's very strong, especially if you use fresh ginger. It's very, very strong. That's going to give us probably about a tablespoon of fresh ginger. This is getting good and hot, so we're going to take our bag of slaw mix and dump that in there. Just right in the pan. This is super easy. We're going to take our ginger that we've just grated, put that in there. We're going to take a pinch of salt, a good hefty pinch. We're going to use some pepper, put a couple sprinkles of that in there. And then to that, we're going to add about 2 teaspoons of white sugar. Now, if you have ever had vinegar slaw, you know that's got a little sugar in it, and that just adds to the taste. We're also going to add probably about 2 tablespoons of this rice vinegar to kind of give it that vinegar slaw kind of feel. And we are just going to stir this up as it stirs down in there and fry it up. Now, if you've ever had cooked cabbage, then you know it's going to get kind of soft. But this is kind of a mixture of cooked cabbage and a vinegar slaw. It's just, now, not everybody loves it. They don't, and that's okay. That's okay if you don't love it. I like it, but I like cabbage, so. My husband, Todd, forget it. He is not eating it. It's green and it stinks, so he's not going to eat it. A lot of people are probably thinking, well, you've got a little Asian, you've got a little country in your soup mix there, and you've got your cake and you got your cornbread. It's a lot of flavors going on, I know, but that's okay too. That's what makes it so good, is that we've just got a lot of everything. You probably hear my dogs barking. I heard the delivery truck pull up. It's either Amazon by the post office, or it's something I've mail ordered. I tell you guys, I do a lot of online shopping, and they deliver it, and it's, you know, that's just the way the world's come now. It's just how it is. Walmart, I order it and they bring it to me. Sam's, I do a lot of ordering, they bring it to me. Amazon, I order and they bring it to me. The Postal Service and the FedEx, and there's the doorbell. They're just letting me know that they're bringing it. And you'll see in here how all those juices are. Now, I really wish y'all could smell, because you could smell this, and it smells like that good old-fashioned vinegar slaw that my grandmother used to make. When I was younger, I didn't like it. Wouldn't eat it. That was what old people eat. But now, I'm older. I'm one of those old people. And I do like that vinegar slaw. You're just going to keep stirring it up so we get everything all good and cooked, and you'll see how much is kind of wilted down. You really won't have a lot of this once you get it all cooked up, but you know, it's going to give you enough for probably 4 servings. And it's good even left over. If you have any left over, it's good. Now, I don't do this, but what you could do is to kind of give it that little bit of an Asian slaw feel, is you could take some ramen noodles, however you say it, crumble those up and toss that in there as well, uncooked, because you know that kind of gives it a little crunch. I don't, because I just kind of like the way it is. I like that cooked cabbage feel. I'm gonna check on our cakes real quick. Okie doke. Now our cakes are out of the oven. Now I'm gonna show you the benefits of using the baking belt and using the pans of water in the bottom of your stove. And here's why. See how this is nice and flat here? Nice and level. You don't have a lot to have to cut off. It's not domed, it's all nice and level, and it's nice and straight. Now, when I took it out of the oven, I smelt it, because you can smell that good flavor, and I listened to it because it didn't pop a lot. So we're gonna let this cool down before we do anything else for it. But as you can see here, it's nice and level. The edges of it are just starting to pull away from the paper, and that tells us it's done too. And to speed things up a little bit, I'm going to take these and put them in my freezer. Our Mexican cornbread is done. The edges are nice and brown around the outside. It's nice and solid. We're just gonna let it set for a little bit and let it cool down until we can cut it. Okie doke. While we're finishing up our cooking here of our slaw, I'm gonna talk to you guys for just a little bit about some things that I really love. Everybody has little things that they use in their kitchen that maybe are their favorite things. Well, these are a few of my favorite things. We talked about the bench scraper. I love it for picking up anything I've cut to put in my things that I'm cooking. And I also use this when I ice a cake around the outside of it. We're gonna go over that use in a minute when we frost our cake and show you why I love that so well. I love that. These are $1 a piece at the Dollar Tree. I absolutely love them. Like I said, I probably have 15, and I'm not lying, in my cabinet because I use them for everything. Cheap, cheap, cheap. $1. You can't go wrong. Another thing I like are these measuring spoons. And this is just a few that I got out of the pantry. I love the handle on them. These are measuring cups. This is a cup, this is a half a cup, and this is a quarter cup. They come in all different sizes. I love the handle on these, and I love that they're deep. And here's why I like that, is because I buy a lot of things, like I've mentioned, in bulk. My flour, my sugar, powdered sugar, I have huge, massive tubs of it. And I like these because you can dip it down in there, level it off, and use it. They are wonderful, wonderful. Again, I don't know why the makers of these products don't make those things so that you can use them. Look how big this handle is. You can get a good grip on it. Your average, maybe your average cup is a lot smaller. And I'm gonna show you one of the ones that I have. Look how small this is. I mean, it's little. Look how much better that fits in your hand. It just is easier. I like it and I prefer it, and I think if you try these, you will too. Now, these I ordered from Amazon. I've bought them in different stores. Not every store carries them, but I think maybe I bought my first set at Target or somewhere, but anywhere like that has them on occasion. So that's another thing that I like that I wanted to share with you. And again, back to these measuring spoons for the wet and for the dry, or the dry and the wet. These are magnetic and they just stay together. I like them because of that very reason. And I like them because the handles on them are longer. Again, like we mentioned before, on some of them, like this one here is so much smaller. You know, you can't get down in deep into things like your cocoa powder or your baking soda or your baking powder. Those things are deeper and you can't get down in there and get to the bottom of your container. Again, come on people, make them so they work with us. These are something else that I really, really love. Now, this thing right here is something else that I love. This is a measuring cup. Not your average measuring cup. It's a shot glass type. It has ounces on the side. It has milliliters, all that stuff. Now, some of them will actually have teaspoons and tablespoons. This one does not. Let me see, I have one. It may be in the dishwasher. It is. This one I used over the weekend. It does have, see how it's dirty? It has teaspoons, tablespoons, it has the ounces, has the milliliters, all of that. This is my favorite one. And you can't really find them with these measurements on there. But if you can find one with the teaspoons, the tablespoons, the ounces, and the milliliter, grab it. I don't care what you have to pay for it, but grab it because you're gonna want to keep one of those. This one's okay too. It's more for ounces. I'll use it like if I'm doing lemon juice or something like that in a recipe, but this one is my favorite one because it's got the teaspoon and the tablespoons on the side. And the old-fashioned glass type measuring cup. Here's why I like this kind better. See how this handle it doesn't come all the way down like a coffee cup handle does. This stops. I like this kind because you can set them inside each other. You know, it'll set down inside there. I have all kinds of different sizes. I have the bigger ones, I have smaller ones. You know, if it had a regular size handle, like a coffee cup handle, you couldn't set it down in there. But because it has this kind of handle, you can nest it in there. And you stack everything up in there. Now what I'll do is when I store these in my cabinet, I'll take a paper towel and I'll just put that in there because you don't want it to hit that glass and chip it and break it. And sometimes, if it's a tighter fit, sometimes they'll stick. But if you've got that dry paper towel in there, it's gonna cradle it and it's not gonna stick. And it's gonna help to keep everything from breaking. That, I like those. That's another thing I love. We're gonna give this a little stir. See how that's starting to brown up on the bottom? That's what we want. We want it to brown in spots, not all over. That just kind of gives it that stir-fried kind of feel. We're going to turn that down now. It's got good color on it. And this is another thing I like, is these spatulas. Or scrapers, or whatever you want to call them. It's kind of curved like a spoon. I like that for when you're doing a cake. You can get in there and just spoon all that up. I don't know why they make most of these things flat. Like this one here. See how this one's flat? They all probably have their own purposes, but it's flat. This is only good for scraping things out. With this, if you've got something that's a little, like the cornbread we made, it's a little thicker, you can actually spoon it out. I love this kind of measuring of, I love this kind of spatula for that very reason, because it acts more as a spoon, or this is just a scraper. Again, they each have their own purpose. And another thing that I love are these cute little whisks. Now it's cute, but I like it because it's metal and it's harder. Now sometimes these little whisks will come with a little silicone on them. And these are good if you're cooking with them, but I don't always cook with a small whisk. I like this kind when I'm doing, when I'm decorating a cake and I have to mix up the color of the frosting. I usually use these because they're stiff and they're hard and they're not real big. I like the smaller ones for that. I love these when I'm making French toast. I love them when I'm doing like a little slurry of like cornstarch and water for a gravy. Anything like that that's a small, I really, really like that. These I use quite a bit, and you can't always find this size in a store. Again, I had to order these online, but I really like these. They're cute, but I really like them because they're not teeny tiny, but they're not massive. So they're good for small bowls. I like those. And these are some of my favorites too. This is kind of like a knife, but it's a silicone type spatula. These things are really good for peanut butter. I know that sounds crazy, but the jar of peanut butter, you can get down in there and you can scrape all that out, or jellies or anything like that. I really like those for peanut butter. These I like for when you're doing like a can of, let's say, condensed milk. When you're making a type of pie or something and you're using condensed milk. I like the spoon type for that because you can spoon it out. And this, you'll see, is flimsy, so you can get in there and scrape it good. And this one's more flat. This is good for, again, like if you've got a small jar of jelly, maybe a short jar where this one's longer. This is a shorter one. And this one too has the kind of curve like the other spatula that I was showing you. I just really like these. They're small, they're little, they're not very expensive, and they're just really, really good. I'm really liking the silicone type things like this. So those are a few of my favorite things. I hope that you can maybe take some of this stuff and use it in your everyday kitchen. If you don't have these things, that's okay. Go buy you some. You deserve it. You're worth it. Okay, we're gonna get back to our slaw here. It's perfect. It's wilted down just a little bit. It's got good caramelization on it, good color. That's not just burnt, honey. No, that's good stuff. That is the good stuff. All right, so we're gonna set this aside. We're gonna get on to our frosting for our cake. All right, so now we're gonna get started on our frosting for our banana cake. And we're going to take 2 sticks of softened room temperature real butter. Now this is the not salted kind, it's unsalted. You could use the salted version if you wanted to, but I don't because it's got too much salt in it. Now we are gonna add a little salt to it to kind of cut that, the sweetness from the powdered sugar that we're gonna put in there, but to use the salted butter, it's got too much salt. So I recommend that you use the unsalted butter. These things are almost tamper resistant. I don't know why they make them so hard. Okay. We're just gonna pop that in there. Now, what I find that most people do when they make a cream cheese frosting or even like a buttercream frosting, they just whip their butter up just a little bit. We are going to whip this for a very long time. We want it to be white. We don't want it to be yellow. We want it to be fluffy. We want it to be airy. So we're gonna leave this on here to whip for probably about 5 to 7 minutes. If you don't have a very strong mixer and you have to use one that's a little less in power, then you just keep whipping it till you get it to about where we're gonna get it at today. And while we're whipping that up, I'm gonna go ahead and put a pinch of that salt in there because I find that that salt kind of helps to break down the cream cheese and the butter. And we're gonna whip it up. You want to make sure after you've whipped it for a little bit to take your spatula and kind of knock that down off the sides like we talked about earlier. It will stick. And just move it around. Now you may have to take your little spatula and get some of that extra butter off there, but you may have to scrape this down 2 or 3 times to get it all down in there. And that's okay too. Okay, now something I did not mention we were going to do today that we are going to do is we absolutely love these pineapples that we get at Sam's Club, and it is pineapple spears that are in coconut water. Well, we love them, but they are kindly pricey, and you know I'm a tightwad. So we bought some of them and we were eating them. Like Todd ate like nearly a jar in 2 days. Well, they're about $7 a jar. And I'm like, buddy, you're going to have to lay off. We can't be doing that all the time. So I studied them. How can we make them at home and not have to spend so much money? Well, I watched videos about different people. Buy chunk pineapple juice and drain the juice and then put your coconut water in there. We did that. It wasn't the same. It was not. It didn't have that really good flavor. The canned pineapples just didn't have it. So I experimented with it, and here's what I've come up with that we really like is a fresh pineapple, coconut water, and a simple syrup. Now, the simple syrup, it is sweet because it's a mixture of 1 cup of water to 1 cup of sugar. And you make a simple syrup and you cook it on the stove just like you would for like your hummingbird nectar. But it's a mixture of 1 to 1, 1 cup of sugar to 1 cup of water. So we're gonna take our container, and we're gonna put our pineapple in here with our mixture, coconut water and simple syrup. So I'm just going to take our coconut and we're going to cut it up and put it in here. We're just gonna take and cut the end off. Now something that you may not know about buying a pineapple is sometimes you'll buy a pineapple and it's not ripe enough or it's too ripe. Something I have found that if you'll take one of the little stems on the inside and gently give it a little pull, if it comes out without having to work at it, then that tells you that your pineapple is nice and ripe. Something you want to look at is the color of your pineapple. See how this has a nice yellow color? It has a little bit of a darker green here, so this tells me it's nice and ripe. And that's a good thing to look for. So we're going to cut the top and the bottom of our pineapple off. We're just going to take our knife and just kind of peel all of this off. Now we're going to take one of these little ballers and cut our little eyes out that we have in here. Now you don't have to do this. It is kind of almost woody. I don't like the feel, so I always cut them out if I don't get them real good when I'm peeling them. We're just going to cut down the center. You'll see right here in the middle of your pineapple is the core. We're going to cut just on the outside of that, just right there. That core is real fibersome and it's kind of hard. You'll see right here we did not get any of that. That's good. And here's your core. That's all hard. You could eat it, I guess, if you wanted to, but it's real stringy. We're going to take a look at our, that's real good. That's good. That's just where we want it to be. It's nice and white and fluffy. We're going to let that set just a minute while we finish this up. Now, the pineapple spears that we buy at Sam's, they come in a jar, and they are spears. They look almost like this. Well, this is really big, and it just is really big. So when I make them, I cut them in big chunks, a little bit bigger chunks than what you get the canned chunk pineapple. We're just going to pop those in there, and we're just going to cut this up into chunks. And y'all, this is so good. It tastes almost exactly like the jarred pineapples that you get at Sam's. I mean, almost. The canned pineapples, they were good. But like I said, they didn't have that real sweet flavor. And they didn't soak up the coconut water like the fresh pineapples do. You almost have to have the fresh pineapple to take on that coconut water. Oh, is it so good. And you can save the juice. You know, I threaten Todd Devine, do not throw that juice away. When you get done eating them, you put that jar back in the refrigerator and you save that juice. It makes a really good cocktail. Okie doke. So we've got that. So we have our one pineapple cut up into chunks, put in there. And we are going to take coconut water. You can use any kind of coconut water you want. This is in a can. I'm just going to pour it in there till it just covers the top. It may take this whole thing. It's going to take a little bit more. Now I saved the jar of the pineapples. As you see, this is what the juice looks like. Now at Sam's Club, their juice is a little clearer because I think their coconut water, like this one, that coconut water was clear. Now this particular brand of coconut water, it's a little milkier. I prefer the milkier one because it's almost like the canned cream of coconut like you use in a coconut cake. It's milkier, it's creamier, it's sweeter, it's thicker. That particular brand, this brand was more water, where this one is milky. You'll see how it's got kind of a milky look to it. This has a better flavor to me. So we're just going to pour that in there. It's a little more than we need, but there's not much left, so I'm just going to go ahead and add it all in there. And then this is our simple syrup I was telling you about, the mixture of 1 cup of sugar to 1 cup of water. I make this up and I keep it in a pitcher like this in the refrigerator. When I make cakes, I brush a little bit of the simple syrup on top of my cakes because that makes your cake moister. It'll help it to last a few more days longer. It just is really good. It just makes your cake a lot more moist. And we're going to put some of this on our banana cake. So we're going to put, not all of it, there was probably a cup in there. We're going to do about a half a cup. Now, that sounds like a lot of sugar, and it is going to be sweet. I didn't say this was not going to be sweet, but you're going to want to just make sure all those are down in there. Take your lid, and you can keep it in a glass jar, or you can keep it in this kind of container. I'm simply putting it in this one today because I have one in the refrigerator that I made the other day, and I want Todd to not know. I want him to get the one that he needs to eat first instead of this one. So there's your big container. The glass jar works fine. This works fine too. You're just going to plop this in the refrigerator and keep it in the refrigerator. It's going to take you about 3 days to take on that really good flavor. And this is not that expensive. These little things of coconut water are not much. I think this one was like $3. The simple syrup to make probably cost 50 cents to make. And the pineapple was about $3 for the pineapple. Now you're probably thinking, Marlene, that's nearly $7. But this juice, once you make it, see, I've got it saved here in this jar. Once you make it, you can just keep adding the pineapple to it. So, you know, I have another pineapple over there. I'll probably make that one in a couple of days. We just really love this. It's really good with, I like cottage cheese. This pineapple is so good with cottage cheese. It's good to eat as a nighttime snack. Yes, it's got some extra sugar in it, but in realization, eating this versus eating candy, this is going to be better for you. So, you know, you just choose which one you want. But this is a really good trick. And trust me, guys, I tried the other. I tried the canned pineapples. It's not as good as what you get at Sam's. This is about 99% close to what you get at Sam's. So you're going to want to do this. We're going to give this one last scraping down of our butter and cream cheese. Okey-doke. Now I'm going to show you what this looks like. See how this is almost taking on a white color? That's because you've got all that air whipped into there. We've gone from yellow like the butter to nearly all white like what we have in our cream cheese. So we're going to take our powdered sugar. In this bowl I have 6 cups of powdered sugar, and we are just going to sift that in there. I'll just dump it. We're just going to pour some in. And again, like I said about the flour, a lot of people will skip this step. I'm not going to, because this sifts all those little chunks of powdered sugar out and gets them all down in there. See how that is like our flour was? When you put that just directly into your cream cheese and your butter mixture and you whip it, sometimes you're not going to get all those chunks out. So you're going to have a chunk of powdered sugar in there. And again, that's one of those steps where people think, that's silly. Trust me, it's worth the little extra effort. It makes a difference. It is time consuming, but it makes a difference. You can use the old-fashioned cranking kind of sifter. I have one of those, a big one, and I use it a lot, but for something like this, I don't know why, I just like the little sifter. And sometimes you can also use like a whisk and do it, but I don't feel like that you get all those chunks broken down with using just a whisk to stir it like you do with this. Can you hear it popping? I'm getting static electricity and it's shocking me. I guess that running of the mixer got it going. Okay, that's our last little bit. And we've had our cake in the freezer cooling probably for about 25 to 30 minutes. It should be nice and cool. Even if it freezes, that's okay too. I always say that icing a frozen cake is always better. It just sets up better. All right, so we've got that. There's our powdered sugar. And we've already put our little bit of salt in there. And I'm just going to stir this all up and get that down off the side one more time. I am quite messy, as you can see. Now to this, we are going to add our vanilla. And I think that was about a tablespoon. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I'm just going to eyeball it. This is my homemade vanilla. I get clear vanilla from Mexico, and I put vanilla beans in there. When I scrape the bean seeds out, I put my pod in there, and those are Madagascar vanilla bean pods in a clear vanilla from Mexico. And trust me, it makes a difference too. That Madagascar vanilla has such just a clean vanilla flavor. It is so good. And it calls for a teaspoon. Now keep in mind, Mexican vanilla is a lot stronger than regular vanilla. So if it calls for 1 teaspoon, we're going to cut back to about a half a teaspoon. So that's what we've got in there. And then we're going to add, in this little cup here, I have 1 to 2 tablespoons of whole milk. Now we may not need all of that. We're just going to look at it. It is pretty thick without it, so I'm going to put about half of it in there. That's going to be about 1 tablespoon. It still looks like it could be a little thick, so I'm going to go ahead and add the remainder of that in there. We're going to turn it off and again scrape it down. Get that butter off the side of the bowl that probably is stuck in there. Now you're probably wondering why I've got this butter wrapper. Always save those butter wrappers because I don't want to put my spatula down on the countertop because you don't know what's down there. But I don't want to have to, get a clean plate or something for me to have to wash. I mean, you see all those dishes I'm going to have to wash. Why would I want to add one more to it? So I use that to keep that on there. So we're going to whip it again, probably for a couple more minutes just to kind of fluff it up. All right. So our frosting is done. We're just going to beat this off the side of it. See how it just holds its shape when you lift it up? That's what you want. You want it to still be soft and creamy, but you want it to be firm enough that it holds its shape when you pick it up. You don't want it to drip. If it was too thin, it would continue to drip, and you would need to add some more powdered sugar. If it was so thick that you couldn't hardly pick it up, then that would tell you that you didn't have enough milk in there. And something you can do too, if you don't want to use whole milk, if you have creamer, sometimes I will use coffee creamer, vanilla flavored, works fine. Whipping cream is really good to use too. Sometimes I'll use whipping cream in that as well. But today I just went with the basics. I didn't want to put too much on you. Here's where we're going to use one of these fun little scrapers. Now this one I didn't show you earlier. This is like a mini scraper. And that just gets good in there for this kind of thing. You can just get all that off without having to waste it. Every little bit counts. All right, here's our cakes. Now when I put it in the freezer, I put it on one of these little cooling racks. That way the air can get around it and cool it down a lot quicker. So we're still nice and cool, not hot at all. You do not want to ever put icing on your cakes while they're warm because they will melt your frosting. And here's a little bottle. I keep these little bottles plastic bottles with my simple syrup in it, I take a little Dremel tool and I drilled little holes in it to make it kind of like a little sprinkler system. And here's what I do with that. I'm showing y'all all my tricks. Y'all gonna be wanting to make cakes and sell them now, ain't you? No. All right. See how nice and flat this cake baked? You don't have a dome on it. Because of the belt that we used and because that pan of water, it baked nice and flat with no dome, so we don't have to cut any of that out. It's gonna stack better, it's gonna lay better. Trust me when I tell you it's worth it. I'm proving to you it's worth it. That parchment paper, it peeled off easy. We got a nice brown edging on it. Now, if this was a white cake, I wouldn't want this brown edge. And we wouldn't get that because we would probably bake it for less time, but like I said before, a banana cake is a moist cake, so it's gonna cook a little longer. So we're gonna make sure and peel this parchment off both of our cakes, and we're just gonna sprinkle a little bit of that simple syrup and use your hand to kindly wipe it on there. You're gonna get the top, the bottom, and the sides real good. Just use what's on your hand for the sides. You don't have to do a whole bunch because we are going to have that frosting. We want it to adhere to the sides better. And this simple syrup, it keeps in the refrigerator for a long time. I bake a lot of cakes for people, so I usually use it before it goes bad. Just rub it on there really, really good. And we're gonna look and see which one's the flattest. They're both pretty flat. This one has a little indentation where I put it in the freezer and it sat on the side of that little cooling rack. So this one, because it has an imperfection, this is gonna be our bottom and this is gonna be our top. Now, anytime I frost a cake, I always use a turntable because it makes frosting the cake easier. This right here is another trick. This is a silicone baking mat. Now, it originally was made for baking cookies on. I didn't like it because it's got like a little diamond pattern on there. You can probably see it, and the cookies took on that little diamond pattern. I didn't like it. So I thought, well, I'm not gonna throw it away because I'm a tightwad. My husband would say I'm a hoarder. I saved it. And then when I started doing cakes, I noticed that when I would put my cardboard on there, look at that, it slides around. I ain't having that. So I cut my mat up into 4 little pieces and I put it on the bottom. I want the shiny side down and the diamond part up. And I put my little cardboard on there and look, it don't go nowhere. Genius. So we're gonna take a little bit of our frosting and we're just gonna put it on the bottom. Now that's gonna glue our cake to our board and keep it from moving around. We're gonna put flat side down, just like that. Can't stand that moisture on my hands. And we're gonna take some of our cream cheese buttercream frosting and put on here a generous amount because we are only doing the 2 layers. See how thick this is? If we did 3 layers, that would be probably 1/3 of that size. And for this cake, I don't know why, but I just like the thicker cake part because the cake is the best part, really. And we're just gonna spread that around. And you'll notice I'm using an offset spatula and I'm spreading it to the very edge and just past it a little bit. And you'll notice I'm gonna spin this around and make a little bit of almost like a little berm wall right there. You'll see, I don't know if you can see in there how it's a little shallower here and a little deeper there. That right there is gonna fill the gap in between our next layer. Now your top layer, you want it to be flat on the top. So this is the bottom. We're gonna do bottom side up. That's gonna give us a flatter finish. We're just gonna pound that on there. You don't wanna put it all on there. You wanna save that little bit. And we're gonna take our spatula and spread it around. This is what we like to call our crumb coat. And you'll see it's moving around. That's because of that simple syrup I put on there. Now, if you froze your cake and this was frozen, then you would take your simple syrup and put it on while your cake is still frozen. You're gonna wanna let it set for about 15 to 20 minutes to soak all that up in there before you start putting it on, because I can kind of maneuver it a little bit because I'm kind of used to it. But if you're uncertain on how to work with it, see how it's kind of jiggling around a little bit, then let it set on your cake for a little bit to soak in, if you're afraid of that. Then we're going to take our flat spatula and just go around the side and spread that in. This is our crumb coat. It doesn't have to be pretty. We are just more or less covering it up. And they call it a crumb coat because you'll see that little bit of crumb there that will come from your cake. Again, that's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Once you put that last little bit on there, it's not going to show. It is really not. And you'll see it's kind of sliding around a little bit. That's okay too. And we're just going to use our spatula and just kind of gently press up against the side of it to kind of fill in all those holes that might be on the side and to push that together and straighten that up just a little bit. You see how that turntable helps with that? It just helps to push all that around. Now, if time were on our side, I would take this and I'd put it in the refrigerator and I'd let it sit in the refrigerator for about 25 to 30 minutes to kind of firm up. But we're almost done with our cooking today and I've kept y'all long enough. So I'm just going to shorten that up a little bit. Now, this is another trick that you would probably want to do at home because honestly, if it's firm, it is easier to do, but once you've done it a couple of times, you kind of get used to it. So in reality, at home, you're going to want to put this in the refrigerator for about 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Even if you leave it longer, that's okay too. Now, when you get it out, it's going to be nice and firm, and it's not going to move around a lot because that butter and that cream cheese has kind of solidified together again, making it firmer. But we don't have the time for that right now, so we're just going to skip that part. I'm going to take what's left of our cream cheese frosting, and I'm going to put it on top of what would be our crumb coat. And we're just going to move that back around. You can see how this kind of moves around. That's just because that cake is sitting on top of that cream cheese, and it's still, the cake itself is not warm, but the cream cheese frosting is not cold either. And we're just going to move that around and use the spatula to go around the side once we get that on there. Because this is not a decorated cake, it's okay if you don't make it smooth as can be. That's okay too. I kind of like the rustic look that it has of just spreading it on and leaving it. You know, I do a lot of decorated cakes, so I have to use my bench scraper as a tool, and I'm going to show you how we do that. But so many times, everything to me has to be so precise, so clean. And that's one thing I don't like about all that is to me, I'm a perfectionist, so I feel like that it has to be nice and clean. So I'm going to show you guys how we use the bench scraper to clean all this up. And here's how I like to hold it with the round side in, because I can put my hand on the back of it and get a nice firm grasp on it. And I'm gently going to spin this around, and you'll see as it comes together how nice and smooth those edges are. And I'm just going to work it up the side and fill in some of those gaps. And you'll see some of that has pulled off right through there with that little bit of cake that's sticking out there. Just take what you have on your bench scraper and cover it up. And it's okay if you still see it. It's all right. Kind of like the pan in my oven. This ain't a beauty contest. It doesn't matter. We all got dust bunnies and we all got crumbs in our cake. It's all right. We're just going to smooth that around, and I'm going to pull it up, as you can see right here, to go up the side of that and bring that up just a little bit more. Then I'm going to take this and set it right in the middle and spin my turntable around and smooth that top off just a little bit more. And we're pushing that little bit of extra frosting out to the edges, and that's going to lift this up just a little bit more. And you'll see some air bubbles right there and right there. If you have those, just take your little spatula with that little bit of extra frosting that you've scraped off, fill in that gap, and spin it again. Just use your little spatula there, your bench scraper, to kind of fill it in. And you know, you'll see some that's on there. Just keep going at it. Just keep moving it around. And that tends to be in the same location of that one little spot that we have where that cake is sticking out a little bit. And that's okay too. I'm going to show you what we can do with that. Now I like to take my little spreader here and just kind of like pull all this back up. And I'm going to show you a trick that I like to do to make the tops of my cake and the sides of my cake really, really pretty. We're going to take this little offset spatula, and I'm just going to start right here in the middle and spin this cake around. Let me cover that little spot back up. We're just going to spin that around and make a little swirl on the top of our cake, pulling that spatula out to the very edge. And we're going to stop it, but we're not going to stop there. We're going to take our spatula again, start at the bottom, spin that cake around, and start going up the side of your cake. And you'll get up there, you'll see you might grab a few places. That's okay. And there you have it. You've got your cake iced. It's got a nice, pretty little swirl to it. That's not just your average little look to it. And you know, it's easy. It's not hard at all. And you're just going to take a little paper towel and clean up the edge here. And clean all them little pieces off. Now at this point you could choose to put you some chopped nuts on there if you wanted to. You could leave it like this. You could sprinkle it with a little bit of cinnamon on the top if you wanted to. Whatever you wanted to do. Use your imagination. It's up to you. If you want to leave it, we're going to leave it plain today because I just think it's pretty. We're just going to leave it plain like this. We're not going to put anything fancy on it. If I was going to make this for a client, I would probably take like... because I did put some cinnamon in it, I would probably sprinkle it with a little bit of cinnamon, just a little bit. I might even mix that cinnamon with some powdered sugar and sift it on top of it, just so that the powdered sugar is going to sit on there, and almost it helps to kindly move that cinnamon around so that you don't have chunks of cinnamon powder on there. But I would mix it and sift it on the top, and then I would probably take like some dried bananas and just kindly set a few on there so that you know this is a banana cake. See how easy that is? This turntable, again, is one of those things that makes life easier. These little cardboard things, most people would decorate their cake on the plate that they're going to serve it on, but this just makes it easier because, you know, you can move it around. You can do whatever you want to it. If you want to put it in the refrigerator, by the time you put a big tall, imagine putting this thing in the refrigerator. It's like, who has the room? So see how easy that is? Super, super easy. Super, super simple. It wasn't hard to make, and it tastes delicious. So we are going to get everything out here. I'm going to show you what we've got on our menu today, and we're going to go from there. So here we have our stir-fried slaw. We're just going to put a little bit of this on this little plate here. We have our Hamby's special soup. We're going to put a little bit of this in our bowl. Oops, see, I splattered. It's okay. It's okay. Then we have our Mexican cornbread. You can cut it in any shape you want, pie-shaped or squares, however you want. It does not matter. Just got to make sure and cut all the way through. So we have our soup, we have our cornbread, our slaw, all of that, and we have our cake. I'm not gonna cut the cake right now because it's not set up real good, but when I do cut it, I'm gonna take a picture of it and send it to you guys so that you can see it. So here we have our soup. All those beans in there we talked about earlier. The pinto beans, there's some lima beans, some cannelli beans in there, some lentils, our corn, our rotel tomatoes, our sausages, our onions, all of those good things cooked in with our onions and our shallots and our chicken stock and our Cajun spices and the ham mix. So good. Daniel Hamby, you would be so proud of that soup. It's not hot because of the spices. It really is not. Even those rotel tomatoes don't make it hot. You get that little bit of a kick from the Cajun season, from the Old Bay, but that's it. It's not hot. I like hot, spicy foods. I would consider this very mild, very, very mild. Then we have our cornbread here. I'm gonna cut into it so you can see it better. With all that cheese that's in there, in our bread, in our hamburger meat there, all of that. This itself could be a meal in itself because you've got the bread, you've got the meat, you got the cheese, you got a corn. All of that could be a meal itself. And sometimes I'll have it as a meal in itself with some fried potatoes. But today, we've kind of kicked it up a little bit. So good. Really good. My mom used to make this when I was little. My dad hated it. But we kids loved it. And we get excited. She would cook this usually on nights that she would cook something for my dad that he liked. Like fried rabbit or something like that. I can't. This would definitely be my choice and not the fried rabbit. Our stir-fried slaw has a little bit of that sesame oil in it with a stir-fry oil and all of our spices in there. Trying not to get a bite that's going to be ugly for you to watch. It's so good. Almost tastes like cooked cabbage with a little bit of that oriental that you get from the sesame oil. It's so good, y'all. So good. Daniel would eat that too. So here you go. This is kind of my tribute take on Daniel Hamby, the friend that he was to me and everybody else that loved him. So thank you, Daniel, for giving us a big old hug and a warm smile and the ending of a good day. You were greatly missed. Until next time, guys, get to cooking, save your money, buy something for yourself because you're worth it. I'll see you later.